There are like a billion trillion ways in which colleges recalculate your GPA. So while you're stressing about whether or not you're going to get an A in your chemistry class, let's talk about how colleges actually look at your GPA and what matters to them. If you're new to my channel, welcome or welcome back. My name is Dylan Nellis. I'm a college admissions coach and the founder of NextGen Admit. We help high-achieving high schoolers just like you create strong college applications that get into your dream schools, but also authentically convey the true you. I am not the kind of college admissions coach that's gonna force you into a mold or make you write a contrived narrative that's gonna sound cliche anyways. I'm all about creating authentic and unique college applications. So if that's what you want and you vibe with these values, then you're gonna wanna stick around in this channel because I'm always posting really informative college application advice and strategies on how to stand out. So let's get into the types of GPAs that colleges consider. There are so many types, so many more than you probably imagine right now. And different schools use different types, and different schools also have different minimum GPA requirements. So we're gonna get into all of that fun stuff. Colleges are not just gonna look at the GPA that is given to them on your transcript. They will often recalculate it according to their standards or how they do their admissions process. So there are 5 different types of GPAs we're gonna talk about. The first type is unweighted GPA. Unweighted is based on a 4.0 scale, where an A is a 4.0 and a B is a 3.0, for example. An unweighted GPA treats all classes equally, meaning you're not going to get extra points because you took an AP or an IB class. So some colleges do focus on your unweighted GPA so that they can compare applicants from different schools more fairly. This would include many liberal arts colleges like Williams College or Amherst College. Now let's talk about weighted GPAs. Weighted GPAs use a 5.0 scale, so 5.0 is the highest that you can score. This gives extra points when you take more challenging classes like an AP class, an honors class, or an IB class. So for example, if you get an A in an AP class, that would be a 5.0 versus if you get an A in a regular class, that would be a 4.0. This system is often used when they want to reward students for taking these more rigorous courses. Typically, highly selective universities like Stanford, Harvard, Georgia Tech, etc., they will look at both your weighted and your unweighted GPA when considering your application. The third type is your core GPA. A core GPA only focuses on the core subjects, so English, math, science, social studies, and foreign language. In this case, elective classes like art or physical education may not be included in this calculation for the core GPA. So I know you may not have heard of this, but certain schools may actually use this, like the University of California system, UCLA, UC Berkeley, UC Santa Cruz. They calculate your GPA based on a set list of approved courses. Now, I've actually linked that set list of approved courses in the description, so I recommend checking that out if you're curious. I think this is really interesting because the colleges themselves are the ones to say, actually, I only want to look at these classes and use that to calculate the student's GPA. Like, I don't care what your high school transcript says, I want to calculate GPA my way. Speaking of that, we have the fourth type, which is a recalculated GPA. So a lot of schools will calculate the GPA based on their own criteria. For example, Stanford and UC Berkeley don't consider your grades from freshman year of high school. I know a lot of you right now are like, oh, say comment. You won't believe the number of messages I get from students who are freaking out about 1B they got in one class. Like, especially if it was in 9th grade, you're okay. For Stanford and UC Berkeley's admissions specifically. So yeah, Stanford and UC Berkeley are mainly focusing on those 10th and 11th grade grades, which are very important, and maybe like the first semester of your senior year grades as well. And they will recalculate your GPA based on that. Now, there are some colleges that will assign their own weights to AP and IB courses based on their own policies. So for example, the University of Florida and the University of Georgia will add extra weights to AP and IB classes in their own recalculated GPAs, while a school like MIT will consider the rigor of your coursework, but they won't officially recalculate your GPA. The fifth type of GPA is a cumulative GPA. This is the overall overall GPA from all of your high school coursework from freshman to senior year. Now, this can be weighted or unweighted depending on your school's grading system. This is just like your general typical GPA that's used in general admissions requirements or your class rank or scholarship eligibility. So for example, some public universities like the University of Texas at Austin considers your cumulative GPA, but also takes into account your class rank. Okay, that was complicated. Now I want to talk about why do they even do this? Why do they recalculate your GPA and how are they using that GPA in their admissions process? So first, one of the big reasons why they recalculate the GPA is to evaluate applicants more fairly, because a lot of high schools vary in terms of their grading rigor. Colleges can also use your grades to assess your growth over time. For example, if you have a rising trend in which your grades improved over the course of high school and therefore so did your GPA, then that can look great to admissions because it shows growth and resilience. Whereas if you have a downward GPA trend in high school, that might raise some concerns. By the way, if you're in that boat where your GPA took a hit because you went through something, whether that was a major life event, a challenge, a health issue, if that dip is significant enough to where you feel like you have to explain yourself, one tip I have is do not talk about it in your college essays. There is a place to explain your reasoning, and it is not your college essays. There's a section for that. It's called the additional information section. So if you feel like you have to explain a dip in your grades, explain it very briefly in the additional information section. But please just don't write about your grades or give excuses for bad grades in your college essays, because that is not going to help you stand out. Now, if you really do want to stand out in your college applications, which is the reason why you're here watching this video, then I seriously invite you to watch my free masterclass. It's on the top school admissions formula, where I literally break down all the factors that it takes to get into a top school. It's completely free. I threw in some awesome bonuses in there that you're gonna love that are also free. And make sure you attend with a notebook and a pen. Wow, that rhymed. Because I'm gonna be sharing some really juicy insights and you're not gonna wanna forget it. The link is in the description, or you can just visit nextgenadmit.com/masterclass. So colleges are also looking at your course rigor. And I know I've mentioned that a few times. What that means is how hard the classes were, essentially. They want to see whether you have challenged yourself to take rigorous coursework, and they want to see that you've taken advantage of the opportunities and the resources that were available to you at your school, because that shows that you're going above and beyond, you're pushing yourself, and you're more likely to be prepared for a college education. Now let's talk about minimum GPA requirements. This is something that's also not talked about a lot, but many colleges actually do set a minimum GPA requirement, and if you're below that threshold, they won't even look at your application. You will have to meet this minimum requirement to even be eligible. So let's dive into another example. Let's talk about UCLA. UCLA is one of the most highly applied to colleges, and so it's very selective, and they have specific minimum GPA requirements for their incoming freshmen. Now, it's interesting because their minimum requirements are different depending on whether you're a California resident or you're not. So, for California residents, the minimum GPA to be eligible for admission is a 3.0 on a 4.0 weighted scale. Then for non-California residents, that minimum GPA requirement is 3.4, right? So you got a minimum of 3.0 for California residents and a minimum of 3.4 for non-California residents. So if you're not from California, the bar has been raised. Now, don't get confused with the minimum GPA requirement compared to the average GPA. Those are different things. The average is usually much higher, and this is like the GPA that is typically seen among students who are accepted to schools like UCLA. So for example, more competitive programs within a competitive school, like at UCLA, that would be sciences or engineering, the average GPA is typically much higher, around 3.8 or above. Again, I want to mention that every school is different and every school has their own institutional priorities and ways of calculating their GPA, and every school has a different minimum GPA requirement. So I recommend doing your research and figuring out what that is. We at NextGen Admin actually did a lot of that work for you. Woohoo! We went through all of the common data sets for the top 50 colleges and put all of the most important information for you to know inside of really easy to read blog posts. You can check out any of the admission statistics for your dream schools by just visiting our blog at nextgenadmit.com/blog. Now let's talk about some tips on how to strengthen your GPA now that you've seen how important it is. So if you have the capacity, I would definitely recommend taking rigorous courses. This would be AP classes, honors classes, IB classes. Yes, they will be more challenging, but if you do well in them, you can also get a GPA boost. It's also really important to prioritize consistency. If you're doing pretty hot in the first few months of school and then you slack off and things get worse, that's not going to look good. You gotta keep up those study habits, go in with a growth mindset, and really work on maintaining those high grades throughout all of high school. If you do have lower grades in some areas, you may be able to retake the class to get a higher grade. And also, when it comes to college admissions, you can balance out having lower grades by having stronger and more unique extracurricular commitments, and most importantly, creating a compelling and strong college essay. Because at the end of the day, your GPA is never going to help you stand out. Sorry. Ooh. It's true, your GPA is not going to help you stand out at the schools that you want to go to because guess what? Everyone else is going to have the same GPA. There will be so many students that have the same scores as you, the same GPA as you, and maybe even the same extracurriculars as you. But this is not to be a downer, because my point is, you have a unique story. No one else has your specific lived experiences and your core values. And a lot of times, people don't focus on that enough when your story is literally the thing that's going to help you stand out in admissions. That's why I focus so much on helping students discover their own personal values and then effectively articulate them in standout college essays. So again, if you actually care about standing out and getting into your dream schools, then check out my free masterclass because it's going to give you so much more information than what I covered in this video. I know this video was a lot about GPA technicalities, but there's so much more to the college admissions game. And honestly, it's a game of strategy. And it can be a very transformational process. It doesn't have to be hell. And that's why my students will come out of this process being like, oh my God, I learned so much about myself. I feel more confident. I created a stronger application and I got into my dream schools. GPA is only one part of the puzzle. And I really want you to get into the schools that you want to go to. I believe that you have the capability to do so. Now it's just about learning the strategy to actually get you in. So check out that masterclass in the description below. I also have lots of other fun tools and resources that you can use for free at my website, again, nextgenadmit.com. I am so excited for your success, and I will see you in another video. Bye-bye.